Yes, and I will be very, very short. I'll just introduce Executive Vice President Teresa Ribera. We were very lucky last year to have her speak at the conference on her first day in office. And I think it's even better this year because now she has 1 year to reflect on, and so we can look forward to that. So, Commissioner, Executive Vice President, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Margaret, and good morning, Raphael. It's true that you were going to be short. I hadn't even the time to prepare my papers. And it's true that last year it was my very first day in office. And I got this very warm welcome of this very dedicated audience. In such relevant times. What a year. You say that now, after 1 year, we have the opportunity to look back. And I was thinking, oh my God, what a year. It has been such an impressive year with so many things happening around. Many of them we could not even expect that were going to be truth. And at the very same time, I'm sure that you, the defendants of the level playing field, the rule of law, transparency in markets, would agree with me on the importance of being vocal when defending competition rules in these turbulent times. That may be the word of the year, turbulence. 1 year ago, I stood before you for the first time as Commissioner for Competition. I spoke about the need to modernize our toolkit to make competition policy fit for the new global realities. And I didn't know that it was going to be so challenging. Shifting geopolitics, rising diplomatic tensions, the core role of green technologies, climate change pressure, the evolution of artificial intelligence, all things that do change the reality that provide the landscape for our economies. And the main question is, where are we as Europeans? Where we want to be? How we want to play in this given reality? 12 months on, we have made good progress in updating our tools. I have worked together with the DG teams to ensure a strong enforcement to achieve positive impacts and to stay true to our mission. And believe me, this will always be the case. Strong enforcement and update understanding on how to operate, even in turbulent landscapes. That's what we will keep on doing, because it will always remain the case to focus on what competition truly stands for. Because well-functioning markets require us to preserve innovation, tackle dynamic realities, promote a level and efficient playing field, and support other policy goals of our society that are part of the economic landscape, societal landscape, and drivers of markets. This defines what competition means today and defines the kind of Europe we want to keep on building. Competition is about preventing companies from dominating markets and keeping corporate power in check. Nowhere is this more relevant these days than in the digital markets. Today, a handful of digital companies can shape how we access information, how business reach customers, and even how the political debates unfold. They perform a very important societal function, but their influence must not translate into the power to control markets, even news or opinions. We have built a strong European digital rulebook, and we stand by it. We promise our citizens to safeguard their choices, their data, their children, their mental health, so that through the enforcement of the Digital Markets Act, we ensure users freedom of choice, not just the illusion of counting on it. Think of our digital markets at work with Apple and Meta. Think also about the antitrust enforcement in another very relevant recent case, in this case on Google. We hear the concerns of our citizens. A democracy remains strong only we can take on new challenges. And today, one of the most significant comes from the rise of artificial intelligence. Over a year ago, we began examining competition in generative AI, and last September we published a policy brief outlining our initial competition concerns. Since then, we have monitored the market closely, and many of the risks we warned about are now beginning to materialize. For example, we warned that powerful players could use their dominance to favor their own AI services and restrict competition. This is what we see in Meta's plan to block third-party AI chatbots from WhatsApp. And that is why we have opened an investigation into this market last week. Think about AI-generating content and news summaries, often used without consent or payment, and potentially breaching copyright rules. That is why we were warned about. And that is why, today, we have opened an investigation into Google's AI-related practices. Google may be abusing its dominant position as a search engine to impose unfair trading conditions on publishers. This could be the case when using their online content to provide its own AI-powered services, such as AI overviews, which are AI-generated summaries. And this could also be the case with similar concerns in relation to content creators' videos uploaded on YouTube being used to train Google's generative AI models. This case is once again a strong signal of our commitment to protecting the online press and other content creators and to ensuring fair competition in emerging AI markets. Concerns being expressed by the media and other content creators for a very long while already. It complements another recent work we have carried on under the DMA. You may remember we opened proceedings into Google's site reputation abuse policy to find out what limits publishers' freedom to choose their partners, the limits publishers' freedom to choose their partners. A healthy information ecosystem depends on publishers having the resource to produce quality content, and we will not allow gatekeepers to dictate these choices. But let me underline, none of this is a personal choice. It was a personal choice. It wasn't, a personal choice of my predecessor. It won't be a personal choice of my successor. It is our duty. This is very important to be underlined. It is our duty as commissioners in charge of defending the treaties and the rule of law of Europe. Whatever our responsibility is, it is our duty. As European commissioners, it is our duty to stand up in order to defend values and the enforcement of our laws. In this case, as Commissioner in charge of competition, it is our duty to defend the toolkit, the competition rules, including the DMA, even in times of weaponization of trade. If we want our companies to succeed globally, we need markets to stay open, fair, and innovative. This mindset is shaping how we look at mergers. We want our approach to reflect the reality of fast-moving, innovation-driven markets. Markets where today's newcomers can become tomorrow's leaders. And I am very proud of my team dealing with the mergers guidelines update. Together, we are building a more dynamic framework for mergers analysis. And this is not about tweaking a few lines. We are reshaping at record speed the structure of the merged guidelines themselves while ensuring we get them right. Our goal is to make a forward-looking innovation-focused approach a core part of how we assess mergers, because it will help Europe stay competitive and give our companies the space they need to innovate and succeed. Let me give you a few examples of how we are working to do so. First, by clarifying how to account for market developments that are not yet visible, but that we can reasonably foresee. Second, by introducing a dedicated framework for dynamic competition analysis, grounded in evidence from hundreds of economic studies. And thirdly, by sharing a framework for dynamic efficiencies, the benefits that materialize in the future but rely on today's investments and efforts. These changes will help us and companies to understand where a merger supports innovation and when it risks undermining it. This includes cases such as killer acquisitions or the elimination of potential competitors by dominant incumbents. But nobody needs to wait for the final publication of the new guidelines to see how this more dynamic approach works in practice. We will apply it transparently in any applicable case that lands on our desk to ensure a level playing field for Europe's companies. Our core principles and tools already allow us to assess more than 90% of cases quickly and efficiently, and that should remain. But we also want to be open to the many deals involving a startup that are not harmful. This is why we will have an innovation shield for pro-innovative startup deals. We want to provide reassurance and legal certainty. A strong demand comes from some sectors we may need to reinforce companies' ability to scale. We are also aware of the need to strengthen the resilience of the supply chains Europe depends on. Competition policy has also a role to play in these fields. Competition policy may help, but keeping our single market competitive and fair is something that also requires a single market stronger and deeper. We cannot create one single market only through the competition tools. No competition or simplification tools can become a distraction for the work on the single market. Simplification is part of the solution. Simplification is good because it makes it easier for all to achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves. But the single market is about common rules and common standards. And if we degrade the common rules or prevent common standards, we risk ending up with 27 sets of rules, the opposition of simplification. Allow me to comment on something which is very interesting. An announcement being made yesterday, stating that the US administration has now said a single federal rule on AI regulation could be important. Of course, they want to avoid having 50 different rules and processes. We Europeans know the importance of being united, of counting on a union. The union matters, as we know very well here in Europe, and are ready to defend it. In the European Union, we want to unify and make it easier for companies to operate across a market of 450 million customers. And we will remain true to this very important value. In Europe, citizens like the open social market economy, and they want us to have high standards. But they are concerned by what it is happening in the world and what it means for our societal model. Here, too, we cannot be naive, and we must ensure our economic security. We have an instrument that can help in our competition toolbox, the Foreign Subsidies Regulation. It is not conceived as part of economic security conditionalities. But we can learn from its enforcement. We have acted to address a gap. We have our stated control, but third countries can and do grant big subsidies that reach our single market. This is why, where relevant, we act under the foreign subsidies regulation. For instance, in the recent ad hoc Covestro decision to rebalance competition in the single market. The parties offer licensing commitments related to Covestro's patent portfolio and sustainability-related technologies, and this is good. Beyond the global playing field, competition is about preserving efficient markets to ensure fairness and affordability for people. And at a time when households and small and medium enterprises are facing inflation and high energy costs, competition plays a key role in keeping everyday goods and services within reach. This is why strong enforcement matters. And this year alone, we have acted in sectors that affect people's everyday life. For instance, think in pharmaceuticals, where affordability is not only about consumer welfare, but about public health, part of our European model too. That's why we recently carried out inspections in the vaccine sector, and as always, we have cases in the pipeline. The same principles also guide our work on one of the most pressing social challenges today, housing affordability. Many member states are experiencing a severe housing crisis with major economic and social implications. While housing policy is, of course, mainly national, the scale of the challenge calls for coordinated action at the European level. This is why we will present the affordable housing package later this month, which includes a revision of the state aid rules. And fairness also means a fair labor market. Our Global Delivery Hero decision shows that employees must compete for talent and cannot limit opportunities for workers. Finally, we have also looked at mass market products. Take a recently open investigation into Red Bull. By looking into potential abuses in the energy drinks market, we are acting early to ensure a major player cannot shut our rivals or harm consumers. It is a clear signal that we want to send. We will step in whenever behavior threatens fair competition in consumers' markets. That is also why we opened an in-depth investigation into Mars' acquisition of Kellanova. And yesterday, we cleared the deal after dispelling our concerns. But in a cost of living crisis, it is crucial that mergers in consumer goods markets are examined with the greatest care. We know that competition is an enabler of competitiveness. But the fundamental enabler of prosperity is counting on an efficient and smart capacity to create wealth in a predictable and stable context. We need an industry that is able to deliver goods and services in a smart manner, with an efficient use of resources, taking into consideration the values of any given society. Competition policy may help us drive this transformation. With the Clean Industrial State Aid Framework, we reply to a demand coming from different member states. We have made it easier and faster for member states to invest in clean technologies, but we have made it transparent, fair, and ensuring the level playing field across the European continent. We know that there is strong need to accelerate the deployment of green technologies, to innovate, to count on renewable energy and green manufacturing. We can provide upfront guidance, transparent, fair, and avoiding distortions. So far, over 12 billion in state aid have already been approved under this new framework, and other cases are still on the pipeline. We are also using competition policy to support companies driving a fair and fast green transition. They want to work, to cooperate, to identify efficiencies and more effective manners to deploy their ideas while preventing distortions in the market and ensuring that there is safeguard capacity to ensure that what they do complies with the law. This is why we issued our first informal guidance letter on sustainability agreements, giving clarity to European ports on how to cooperate for the environment while respecting competition rules. Companies are committed to the green transition, and sometimes to achieve their green ambition, they need to work together. We are proud to help them to do so, while taking into consideration transparency and avoidance of distortions. Ladies and gentlemen, these commissions, as well as your conference, will celebrate its anniversaries at the start of the holiday season. So we count on a great opportunity to look back and reflect, as it has been the case for me this morning. 1 year on, I'm proud of what we have achieved, but I know there are lots of things to do in competition policy and beyond. And in 2026, we will keep pushing forward, strengthening fairness, boosting competitiveness, driving a greener, more innovative, reliable, predictable, and stable Europe. Many thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, so as you said, it has been a year. Maybe then my first question to you, and we just have a few minutes, but my first question to you would be, during this year, what has surprised you most? So what were you not expecting, good or bad, in this first year?
I tried to reflect it in my comments. I think that the most surprising thing to me in this year was the strong push against the rule of law, a little bit everywhere, how it is being challenged. And at the very same time, the good surprise, the good thing was to identify how through the competition tools we can help to defend, to stand up the importance of the rule of law, to develop our values, to ensure that the business community can count on a predictable, reliable, stable, and committed Europe towards the rule of law and a thrilling, innovative market.
Yeah, no, that's of course very, very important. And us, of course, as economists, also like other aspects of your jobs, like guidelines. So I have a quick question on that, because it's of course the revision of the guidelines is on everybody's mind. It's a huge task. It has been 20 years, and it will have, of course, strong implications for the years to come and policy for the years to come. And you've consulted widely on the guidelines. And I think if I look at the summary of the contributions that have made, one point that is made in particular by large businesses is that they, and I use their language here, is that they want a more dynamic and future-oriented competition policy, and also some of them want competition policy to be in line with broader policy objectives. So my question to you is, do you think you will make those large businesses happy?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, because something that I have learned this year is that what makes some happy makes unhappy the others. And that is also the case when thinking in economic terms or legal terms in this context, in the competition toolkit and the update of our guidelines on mergers. I think that it is fair to say that first, just to the economists, not only to the lawyers in this room, it is very important to work with the community of economists dealing with competition and markets, including the very great team of the chief economist team and all those that have been involved in this exercise in the DG competition in the past, but as you say, right now too. This also explains why, when trying to update the mergers guidelines, it was very important to ensure that we could get the feedback and stimulate the thinking, the comments, the observations, the assessments of the whole community. And this is why we have dedicated time to open first a very great and openly oriented consultation, public consultation at the beginning, but also through the different streams of work, including the workshops that we have committed to host. Some of them already have taken place, including last week, and some to take place in the weeks and the months to come. Why I say this? Because I think that yes, there may be an interest of the large companies in certain sectors to use these merger guidelines to build what it has been named European champions. In many cases, this notion is much more closer to be provided by a better functioning single market than through the assessment of corporate operations. And that is something that it is very important to remind once and again, to avoid mistakes. At the very same time, it is true that we want to be sure that we provide a shield for innovators to be able to innovate. So yes, it may happen that in certain occasions scale matters, and it is absolutely possible to count on mergers approval, and this is what we find in most of the cases, but not at the cost of harming consumers' rights and choices. First comment. Second comment, and with that I stop, that I am saying that you want to ask other things. I also think that it is important to take into consideration that this capacity to compete and to go through merger guidelines update needs to be grounded in today's reality. So yes, it is truth. Today we identify the green and the digital drivers as the main drivers of strategic decisions being made at the boards of whatever company all over the world. And this is why we need to think whether there may be different assessments of dynamic efficiencies or cooperation that could help into a safe context to cooperate in non-horizontal or horizontal manner. So I think that, yes, we need to understand that competition and market dynamics do work on reality. And reality is evolving, and updating the criteria is important. This is what we try to reflect, and this is what I hope we are able to deliver with the first draft guidelines being issued in spring. And in the meantime, there is still a lot of work and a lot of interactions to be developed within this community.
Yeah, no, it's hard to disagree with that. So if I understand correctly, you've talked about strong enforcement. At the same time, you've talked in your speech about innovation shield, about dynamic efficiencies. So am I understanding it right that you're saying you're not looking at a more lenient enforcement overall, but in some instances, in particular, when it's linked to innovation, there could be some evolution?
Of course, we should provide room for innovation, not at the cost of getting in the position of those that say that want to innovate, but it is not proven that this could be the case. So it is a delicate balance on how we can provide the room for innovators to innovate and to thrill, and at the very same time not to prejudge or to be unfair when taking into consideration the information being given. But of course it is not the intention to be, if we can say it that way, less lenient or more lenient. We think that we need to enforce the regulation, the rules that are there, and we need to update and to understand the criteria and the assessment that has evolved in the last 20 years and that needs to provide the right answers for today's reality worldwide and at the European scale.
All right, thank you. Another topic on which economists have a great interest, or even though it wasn't clear from the start, is the DMA. So there's lots that has happened in the DMA this year. And one of the objectives of the DMA was also to spur innovation, so we're back to innovation. So my question to you is, do you think that the DMA is achieving its goal in spurring innovation, and what do you think of the process so far?
Yes, I think it is providing the adequate room for innovation to ensure new startups or small-scale companies coming up, providing new solutions, new proposals to the public, to avoid this dominance being used in an abusive manner to consumers. And I think that it is having a very positive effect, not only in Europe and among the different players in this community in Europe, but also elsewhere. We identify that in many cases there are small companies coming from other parts of the world, including the US, stating and welcoming the fact that they can challenge the big ones, because there is room to allow them to enter into this market. And I think that on its own, I would say that the DMA is a very innovative product as a rule, as a regulation context that can be an effective, quicker and cheaper manner to address the risk of abuse of dominance in a given market.
All right, and then last question. If you come back to our conference next year and we look at the year that has passed, 2026, what would you have liked to achieve in that year, in the coming year? What would define success for you?
Oh, thank you so much for the question. I really hope to be here next year. I hope to be here next year. I hope to be in a context where we Europeans feel the pride of being Europeans, and we feel much more comfortable with the impression that this turbulence are a little bit lower, and the rule of law, and the creation of wealth and prosperity, and the cooperation mood, and the possibility to keep on working together is much more a reality. And in the meantime, counting on this second chapter of updating our rules and the strong consideration of the strong enforcement, so respect and trust coming from our citizens is, as it is today the case, a real sentiment broadly spread in the European continent and elsewhere.
That would be great. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner.